So let's say 20 years ago, I marry in Vegas
Yeah,
in a 20-minute
yeah,
ceremony, and I get a marriage certificate,
yeah, yeah,
and I live in Vegas for all those 20 years, and then I come to England
yeah,
with my husband,
yeah,
and then quite quickly, we fall out and want to get
yeah.
divorced. So I've been here 2 or 3 months. I'm like, right, it's over.
Right,
Where do I get divorced? Vegas or
right.
here?
Well, that's not that simple,
I
a
thought you were going to say
question.
that's not uncommon.
Well, it isn't that uncommon,
Okay.
to be honest, because this jurisdiction, compared to many places in the rest of the world, is very generous. Right. So if you were the less financially successful spouse, it is a very common strategy
Mm.
to come to this country and seek a divorce. Um, in terms of habitual residence, you'd probably need to be here 12 months, not 2 months.
Okay.
You might have an alternative jurisdictional base, which is on the basis of your domicile. In which case, or on the basis of your husband's domicile or his habitual residence.
Mm.
So there are a number of different criteria, but you would have to prove you came within one of them, or you could sit it out here, wait for the 12 months to pass, and then issue your divorce proceedings.
That's so interesting because quite often people talk about strategy on divorce, and
Mm.
what you've uncovered there is actually there is a conscious strategy where you could come to the UK because it's so generous here. Why is it more generous in the UK?
Okay, the first thing I'm going to do,
Yeah.
Paul, is I'm going to tell you off. We don't talk about coming to the UK because, in terms of family law, there is no such thing for most parts of family law as British divorce law.
No.
What I deal with, I'm only qualified in England and Wales. So England and Wales is one jurisdiction. Scotland and Northern Ireland are quite different. And in fact, they are not nearly as generous as England and Wales. I have yet to hear of anyone from overseas who has ever gone to Scotland, as an example, because they want to go and get divorced there. I think that's most unlikely from what I understand about Scottish divorce law. Where people come to is England and Wales.
So
So
telling
it's,
off becomes tip number one.
yeah,
Make sure it's England or Wales.
well, absolutely. All right. So in terms of habitual residence, you've got to be habitually resident in the right part of the United Kingdom.
Okay, and then so what is more generous about this jurisdiction, England and Wales, as opposed to staying in Vegas, for example? Or, I mean, yeah, you can't comment too much on Scottish law. You understand that it's not as generous, but what would you put your finger on and say this is more generous in England? That's very
Well,
well known.
yes. I mean, I think one of the key things about England and Wales is we have discretionary criteria, and that ultimately, in Section 25 of the Matrimonial Causes Act 1973, which is all online and anyone can go and Google, what you will read is that one of the criteria is financial needs. And all family lawyers who practice in England and Wales know very clearly that regardless of the circumstances, regardless of who brought in what, that frankly, that is the trump card. Because what you can't do is leave one spouse with nothing so that their financial needs, even at a basic level, are not met. What you can do is have lots of arguments about at what level their financial needs should be met. And you can try and deploy prenuptial agreements or whatever it might be, or say, well, that's not fair because a large part of my assets were inherited, or I brought them into the marriage. And that's all very well and good, may depress the level of financial needs. But what it can never do is eliminate what the other spouse's right to have some level of financial needs met. And that may well be different to other parts of the world. I mean, I do a lot of work in Latin America and also Spain. They don't have that concept of financial need. assets. So you are perfectly free to enter into a form of prenuptial agreement where essentially the other person can be left with nothing. Equally, the law generally in those jurisdictions would not take into consideration any assets that are brought into the marriage or any inherited assets. And time again, what that results in practice, is people walking away from marriages with nothing.
So